Good afternoon and welcome to this session, which is focusing on what to expect from a franchisor. So I can see people coming into the session now, so that's great. Welcome everybody. What we have today is two experts in franchising who are here to answer my questions. And if you have any questions yourself, feel free to put them in the chat window and I will put them to both Dan and Jed today. So you can get all the info that you need about becoming a franchisee. Both very experienced franchisors, both have supported franchisees through the whole process over many years. So Dan, just thinking about the journey, really, it's all about transitioning from one journey in life into a new journey in life. So anyone that's going to speak to yourself today, I'm interested to know, firstly, what they should expect. Actually, I'm jumping the gun because I'd like you to introduce yourself and your franchise and the sort of people that you're looking to join your franchise business. Can we kick off with that one?
Nick, obviously you and I have known each other for a number of years, so it obviously goes without saying I know who you are and you know who I am, right? But the guys on the webinar don't necessarily. So my name's Dan Archer. I'm the founder and UK managing director of Visiting Angels in the UK. So we are a domiciliary care provider, a home care provider. We're a very different sort of home care franchise because we focused very much on the needs of our care staff. We call them caregivers. Because of that, we say that we are a carer-centric organisation. So we've tried to put the staff at the heart of what we do, because really without care staff, we don't have a business. So the brand itself is an international brand. We're in 5 countries. We've got over 700 franchisees across the world. I'm responsible for the UK, and I brought the business to the UK in 2017. First thing I did was start a franchise myself. I became a franchisee myself. I thought if I was going to help other people to do the same, I needed to have done it firsthand. So I started an office in Sheffield in the north of England. And from that beginning there in 2017, we are currently at 18 franchisees across the UK who are either live or going live. And so we are growing at the moment at a rate of around about 1 franchisee per month. So yeah, I guess in terms of what someone should expect, I guess, and you know, you're absolutely right to say, Nick, it is very much about transition. In my experience, and I've been in franchising for 23 years now, so in my experience, usually people are transitioning out of an employed situation into a self-employed situation for the first time. And obviously one of the advantages of franchising is that it is a supported self-employed situation. So you've got somebody with you along the way to help you through that process. I think the hardest thing really for me in terms of that transition, the thing that people should be most aware of right at the very beginning, is that usually when you work for an organization, you've got a structure around you that shares the responsibility. And one of the major things about becoming self-employed for the first time actually is you have to be largely self-dependent. Franchisor is clearly going to give you a guide on what to do and what mistakes to avoid. But one of the nice things about franchising is you're absolutely a master of your own destiny. So you really do reap the rewards of the effort that you put in. So that is really the first transition, I guess, that people need to be coming to terms with, rather than being sort of part of a corporate team. When you start your own business, you have sort of day one as a business owner. And although you're getting franchise support from the franchisor, there's also an awful lot of effort required from the franchisee.
So Jed, you're also introducing people to the world of self-employment, and you'll be speaking to people today. So tell us a bit about yourself, your business, and the sort of journey that you'll be taking people through on that step process of decision making about moving from what they're doing now into a new future in franchising.
Okay, I've been involved in franchising for a great many years now, since the beginning of the 90s. My experience is that a lot of people, when investing in a franchise, think they're buying a job and they're not. They think they're buying a business and they're not. They're making an investment, and that investment is normally in themselves and their own future through the franchisor, and securing the greater chance of success by investing into a franchise network. And our franchisees come from all walks of life and from all sorts of reasons. But actually, the vast majority of our franchisees join us from full-time employment. They give up full-time employment to make that leap of faith from that comfortable position of a regular paycheck every month to regular hours every week. And they make that leap of faith to leave that behind them. And the one thing about being in employment is you are going to get a paycheck every month. The unfortunate thing is that's all there's going to be for the rest of the month. So, and there's normally always from an employed position, too much month left at the end of the money. So as a franchisee, you're actually in control from start to finish. Not initially, but eventually. If you can follow a system, if you can put the effort in, I can almost guarantee, with some caveats, that they will be successful. And the only guarantee or caveat that I would put in there is that if they've took a decision to fail, because for me, success and failure is a decision that you make. And I know people who have been 100% successful at failing, because that's what they set out to do.
Right, I see.
They set out to prove that this wasn't going to work. But if they're determined and are prepared to put the effort in, and as Dan was saying about, you know, when you transition from employment into self-employment, you know, you need to realize quite quickly that if you don't put the stamps on the letters aren't going. You know, you've really got to have that real belief and determination, and be prepared to work hard. And if you work hard, the work gets easier, and your success becomes greater.
So really, Dan, what Jed has brought out there is, I think, attitude. So what have you got to say about the key, what are the core assets that someone can bring into a franchise that will help them maximize their potential for success?
Well, look, I mean, Nick, I think, you know, for us as franchisors, the special sauce in this relationship is the franchisee, right? So, you know, we've got proven business models, okay? We've replicated the proven business model. You know, I could be replicating this business model by borrowing money from the bank and employing people at a local level to run it as a corporate structure. But the reality is I get far more when someone who's invested in the business is doing that at a local level, because it's their business. And as Jed says, the reality is it's their win as a result of that as well. It's not just about what they earn each month. Here's the thing, something that, you know, I regularly notice with people who've come from employment. They think about one element of the return that they get from their franchise business, but they miss an important second element. So they will often talk about the replacement of a paycheck. Now, you know, in business terms, we talk about a revenue return on investment, which is the profit that you're able to take from the business as you're running it. That's your equivalent to the paycheck. But the reality for most good franchise businesses is that the franchisee is also building something of value itself. So it's like building a house from the ground up, or it's like buying a shell of a house and renovating it. The more effort you put into it, the more it's worth down the track as well. So franchisees also need to realize, as well as that revenue return on investment, there's a potential capital return on investment at some point in the future. And you're never going to get that from an employed position, because ultimately, unless it's your business, you don't own it to sell, right? So that I think, again, that's an important consideration, is realizing that all this effort's worth it, because it's not only about the paycheck, it's also about what you're building of value.
So that's a very good point, Jed. In terms of the franchisor's role to help the franchisee realize that asset value, realize their potential, where do the two come together? How does the franchisor work with the franchisee in order to realize the maximum potential available through the franchise business?
I guess it all starts at the recruitment stage. To be honest, Nick, it's recruiting franchisees isn't such a difficult task. Recruiting the right franchisees is not so easy. So it starts at the recruitment stage, really, and making sure that we're a good fit for them and they're a good fit for us.
So what are the steps that you and the franchisee or potential franchisee go through together? Because it's not really a sales process, is it? It's more of a selection on both sides. So how does that work on a step process?
It is a selection. We're looking at them, and hopefully they're looking at us. So the selection process starts normally with an inquiry through one of the various portals that we work with. And often than not, we get a lot of inquiries direct to our own website. We've got a lot of franchisees now who were former clients before they became franchisees. And of course, there's the franchise exhibitions, which in a normal world, in a normal year, are always very, very valuable to us as a source of recruitment. Some franchise shows have proved to be more successful than others, but we have never ever not recruited from one of the shows. Right. So it starts.
So you meet great people. That's stimulus, if you like, the start of the awareness.
Yeah.
But there's a big gap between the awareness and investing. there's a gap between there for both of you. How do you fill that gap?
Well, our gap, because of the nature of our business, because it's seasonal, so we will pretty much shut off recruitments by about July for this year at least, because we're a seasonal business and people need to be trained, they need to be marketing their business, and they need to be signing up business. So the length of time, ours is a little bit unique from other franchised operations, where the lead time can be 6 months to a year from initial inquiry to people signing up. Ours is typically 3 to 5 months from initial inquiry to sign up.
So quite a long due diligence.
It's relatively long, but it's the decision-making process seems to be quicker. The due diligence, I don't think, is any different from any other franchised opportunity, but the decision-making process seems to be a bit quicker in our business, at least because of this. Because if you've missed it for this year, you've missed it for the whole year. Right.
So Dan, I imagine that your business is not seasonal.
No.
And so
Definitely
there's a real due diligence care due diligence for the franchisor, isn't there? You're leading people into potentially a better future. So how do you take people through those steps in terms of making that choice?
And there's a huge responsibility on franchisors in the care sector to do this well. And I have to say, from my perspective, I think it's a mark of an ethical franchisor, the good job they're doing this stuff. So you're right, it's not a sales process, but I've always described it as it's a little bit like when you watch a nature program and you've got two birds doing a mating dance, yeah? So we're both simultaneously trying to impress each other, and over time we find out what we really like. Now there's a lot. Okay, so I've been recruiting franchisees for 23 years. I've never met a franchisee that puts their bad habits on the table at the first meeting. People don't do that. So a franchisee comes into that meeting wanting to show a version of themselves, and we come into that meeting wanting to show a version of the business. Now, when we find a meeting in the middle, that takes a bit of time to get to that. So from a perspective of what we do with franchisees, I will take people through a process of really understanding what their motivation is. Okay, it's a significant investment to get into the home care market, and there is a huge responsibility when you're running a home care business. It's also a very tightly regulated marketplace. So we've got to make sure the candidates we're progressing are viable, good potential candidates. And I take a very simple view with that if someone cannot write me a persuasive business plan for this business, they stand little chance of being able to run the actual business itself. You can't write the plan, you're not going to be able to run the business, right? So that's an important part of our process. So education first, then we put a series of obstacles in people's way in order to hopefully have the good people, the strong people, overcome those. But there's a really important point here, Nick, just in terms of the regulator that we work with. So we're regulated by the Care Quality Commission. In order to be a care provider in the UK, a business owner has to be passed by the CQC as a fit and proper person. Now, part of my role as a franchisor is to make sure that I am doing background and due diligence checks on franchisees so that they are able to satisfy the CQC that they've been through a selection process. So actually, in order to get registered to deliver the care that we deliver, we have to evidence that process. So that's background checks on the individual. It's definitely a security check, a disclosure and barring service check. It's a check of the disqualified directors register. It's a comprehensive business planning process. It's a series of meetings, because I find that, experience tells me people can have good days and bad days, but if I meet you 2 or 3 times and they're all good days, then that's probably a good indicator that you're a good person. We also take a bit of time to understand the scenarios that people have worked through previously. So some of the questioning we're using when we're talking to prospective franchisees is designed to illustrate the way people think. And we also have a comprehensive personality profiling system that we use, which again gives us a bit of insight into what makes people tick a little bit. So it's really about making sure from our perspective we're picking the right people.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Jed, it's from what Dan said, it's all about building communication, understanding, and that all important word trust. So without trust, you're not going to take that step, are you? So you have to build that foundation of trust. So when people decide, right, this is for me, this is the franchise in the future for me, you enter this trading relationship together and you've a trust relationship together. How do you work with franchisees in order to take them from scratch into that initial up and running phase within their franchise and building on that trust that they've invested into you?
Okay, well, there's a good chance when we recruit a new franchisee, if they're moving into a virgin territory, that there will already be some existing business in there. So it's about embedding them into their own territory. It's about introducing them with existing clients. Every new franchisee in their first year will be assigned a designated BDM, which will only work with new franchisees during their first year. And that's a lady called Liz O'Gara. And she has been a franchisee before she moved over to us. The franchise business is still operating, but her aunt has taken that business over, which is Birmingham. So they've got a dedicated business development manager with them for right through their first year in business together with us, and who has been a former franchisee. So there's great synergy there. Once they've gone through their first 12 months and certainly their first Christmas, then they would move up to the next level to a regional business development manager. And we have training right throughout the year. Unfortunately, some of it's been virtual over the past 12 months, but we have had some actual training. We've been able to, not many people in a room, but we have been able to do it. So we have training right throughout the year, constantly making sure that they know what they're doing. We've got press releases going out. We've got Google adverts going out for them. We're helping them market their business. We will set up showcases for them if we need. So everything that we've done in the past that's made us successful at our business, even before we decided to franchise, we still believe in that, and that's what we push into every franchise territory. Basically, the same things that we've always done that still work, and if they don't work, then we've moved away from them and we found something else that does. But because we owned before we were franchised, and of course we were just the Christmas decorators doing this for ourselves. Yeah. And I think our network at the moment is at about 46. So of course we've had people that have come and gone in the past. That will happen in every franchise, in every franchisor. So it's just making sure that we've got everything in place to support them that I would want if it was me. And I've also been a franchisee many years ago. I was a Chemex franchisee many years ago, going back to the early 90s with Les Gray and Roger Wilde and Steve Bignell.
Right. So franchising's in the blood. It's something that's always been in that DNA, for whether you're following or whether you're leading.
Since the early 90s, yes.
Fantastic. So Dan, what Jed brought out there for me was that about having a proven business model, and leading with that proven business model. But something really important as well is that providing that expertise that from day one that the franchisor has, that would be very difficult across a number of areas to gain as an individual if you were going into business yourself. Can you bring out a little more about how you would do that, how you would move the franchisee forward through the training and support and leveraging of that central expertise?
Yeah, Nick, I certainly can. And do you know what? I think in some respects, actually, the start of your question there is one of the problems when it comes to care franchising, because there are some very well proven concepts, but unfortunately, those concepts were proven many, many years ago. And the reality is that we live in a very different world now. In a post-Brexit world, there is a care staff. In a post-Brexit world, it's not as easy as it used to be to find people to go out and deliver care. So one of the things really that marked us out when we started as a business was we took a very different approach to many care providers in market, of being carer-centric, of looking after carers first. Now, that's meant a couple of things. So it's meant, firstly, that there's some intellectual property which is ours that we've had to prove to work for ourselves, which I've clearly done through my branch in Sheffield. But it's also meant that when we're helping people to start those businesses, some of the experience which might be garnered elsewhere in the industry is not necessarily as useful in our business model. So when we're recruiting senior members of staff to help our franchisees to run their businesses, if we're looking for people who come from the traditional care sector, they may not have the skill set that we're looking for. We might be trying to find people who take a different approach. So that means we've got to have very robust training programs, because if they're not going to know our way of doing it, we need to have a way of giving them that intellectual property, that knowledge. So that's for the franchisee, and we've a comprehensive 3-week franchisee training course that a new franchisee comes through. It's also for the franchisee's first employee, their registered care manager. We train them as well, because I don't want to leave anything to chance. I want to make sure they understand the way we work as a business as well. But it's also about continual support. And the last 18 months have really been an example of where that has been absolutely essential for business success. We are simultaneously blessed and cursed in the care sector, because the reality is that the pandemic has meant that we have been busier than ever. We've not been negatively affected in the same way as people in restaurant or hospitality businesses have been. But it has also put an awful lot of pressure on teams, because we've been required to go out there and operate as normal when many of society have been sat at home working from home. You can't provide essential personal care through a Zoom connection. So we've got hundreds of care staff across the UK who've been literally facing the pandemic eyes on and have been dealing with that on a daily basis. So I guess in addition to the sort of the usual training, we've had to be very dynamic in coping with changes that have come from updates from the regulator, updates from government, the changes that have been needed in terms of the way that we operate, but also us being aware of the fact that, as a carer-centric organisation, we've really had to think about looking after our care staff differently. We've had to think and worry about our care staff's mental health. We've had to think about the stress and anxiety that they're facing, because when people are staying at home, my staff have had to make sure that they're going out there to help people. But I think, again, that's a good sign of an ethical franchisor, isn't it? They're dynamic enough to be able to support people for whatever challenges business might throw at them.
Yeah. So that really, it's about leadership. It's about flexibility, quick changes and support. There's that whole package there where you're very much supported. You're not really left on your own and floundering about.
No. I think there's a bit of a misnomer in franchising here, because very often people talk about structured systems. Everybody in franchising knows how many operations manuals McDonald's have got and how well detailed it is in terms of telling you exactly how to run that business. And I think some people misread that as being controlling. But my argument would be, actually, good franchise businesses are really dynamic businesses, because if you're empowering a franchisee to run their own business, to have their own good ideas, and then you're sharing that best practice within your network, that's the level of research and development that most businesses can only dream of. It's control for the right reasons, but it's also a super dynamic industry in that respect.
So you're harnessing the power of the collective, really.
Five heads are better than one, 10 heads are better than five, right?
So none of us are cleverer than all of us, Dan, are they?
Absolutely right.
So, Jed, thinking about looking forward outside from the pandemic, obviously we've been through a very difficult time and all businesses have been affected in one way or another. And for those that have been interrupted or stopped completely, they're coming into a time when suddenly there's demand again, because it wasn't that the demand wasn't there, it's just that they weren't allowed to trade. So as a franchisor coming back into that time of demand, how are you going to be working with your franchisees to take them forward, to help them really achieve what's available to them in the rest of the year?
Okay, well, we've already run some training courses this year, several training courses about that. About just this week, we did one, Marketing for Success or Failure. And we are geared up for it, and we're ahead of it. So just going back to what Dan was saying there before about having to support his franchisees during the pandemic, I can totally empathise with what he said there, because my wife runs an IT unit for a regional specialist brain hospital, which was commissioned by the local general hospital. And if I put myself in Dan's position, I had to learn to become very understanding, very patient, very forgiving, very sympathetic very, very quickly, to be honest. And I'm sure Dan's position was no different in having to deal with all his own network in that, because the whole situation was etched on her face. She was just working such long hours, dealing with such difficult circumstances, and every time she went out the house, she put herself at risk, and every time she came home, she put us all at risk. I can really empathise with what Dan's had to deal with.
But you've been leading your own network, and you've had your own challenges. So
we have had challenges.
Tell us a bit about that, and how you've been leading and supporting through the challenging time.
Well, any minimum fees that were included in the agreement were all waived for obvious reasons. Some franchisees performed better than their previous year. Overall, as a network, we're about 2 million down. So
Right.
We've had to put support in place because that could bring about some financial difficulties, which we've done.
Right.
And some of
So
them.
fantastic support there. It's the franchisees are not on their own. They're really benefiting from that franchise or franchisee relationship. Yeah,
well, we've put a lot of financial support packages in place there. One thing we did last Christmas, because a lot of shopping centres were cancelling because their budgets for Christmas suddenly got absorbed by COVID signage and floor graphics and sanitizing stations and one-way systems and
there's little things like that, yeah,
that you didn't expect. So we put a package together called Operation Save Christmas. So any franchisee that wanted to sign an agreement with a client but couldn't for this year, we provided all the stock for free of charge. The client didn't pay anything for the first year. The franchisees will pay for the stock this year. But the clients have signed a 4-year contract rather than a 3-year contract, but the first year was free. So that's just an example of how we've put support in place so that moving forward, they've all got contracts in place now from last year when under normal circumstances, nobody would have been signing them.
So real benefit there, real benefit, real leadership, real support.
And it's looking for the silver lining and the opportunities that come from any disaster, if you like. There's one door closes, another door opens. Right. So, and you've got to push on a lot of doors to find out which is the one that's going to open. So we're always looking for different ways. We set up amid COVID, we set up a franchise advisory council, which were elected from different regions, so that we can interact with them. We meet 3 or 4 times a year. They canvass their region for feedback. We're looking for positive feedback. We don't want it to be a shin kicking contest. We want it all to be positive feedback. Constructive and supportive of each other. Right. Based on, as Dan was saying earlier, none of us are clever than all of us. So if the people who are out there who are dealing with some of the issues that, when you start your business and before you become a franchisor, you're dealing with, but as a franchise or that's now got a network, you are a little bit removed from that arena. And it's the people who are on the front line that can help us develop our business as well, which will help them develop their business. So it's very much a partnership. It's a marriage almost. When somebody comes to us and says, "Will you marry me?" and we say, "I do," you expect that's going to be for a long time, and it's not going to be a bed of roses, but you're going to work at it to make that relationship work, and that's what we try to achieve. Yeah, definitely. And Dan, what Jed touched on there was not only the beginning of the managing from the initial awareness through to joining and the initial joining to getting up and running, but then there's that whole working through thick and thin together. How important is that in franchising?
Well, I think it's an essential part of the relationship. Jed's talked about it as a marriage. It's absolutely right. There's give and take from both parties. The relationship matures as it grows. I think equally you could argue that ending a marriage is quite an expensive thing to do, and ending a franchise is potentially an expensive thing to do. You could also argue that if you, in franchising terms, if you marry in haste, you can have 5 or 10 years of a franchise agreement to repent at your leisure, right? So the analogy as long as you like, but the truth of the matter here is, and I think this again is the thing that people sometimes underestimate. The ongoing relationship between franchisor and franchisee, and whether the financial connection to that, whether it's a percentage of management service charge or it's a commission on the goods that are bought and sold, that's the franchisor's vested interest in franchisee success. Okay, we care whether our franchisees are successful because actually it's in our interest for them to be bigger and more successful. We do well out of that. Again, we can do more support with that when we're doing well out of that. So, there's a relationship here which requires both of us to contribute to it. The franchisee is obviously responsible for their business in their area, but the franchisor is also there to try and help the franchisee avoid mistakes, help the franchisee cope with circumstances, support the franchisee when they need it. And if we're working together, it's an effective partnership.
Right, well, that's a good place to end because we've run out of time. But what I'm going to say finally is, Dan, can you just tell everyone who's watching your remind us your brand name, you're in the exhibition hall. The best next step people can take now is to go into the exhibition hall, go to the stand, speak to these guys. You can speak to them through chat or through video. get your own questions answered. So Dan, your brand and where people can find you in the hall.
Okay. So yeah, we're Visiting Angels. Because we're a V for Visiting Angels, we're towards the end of the list of exhibitors in the hall. So if you scroll right the way to the right, you'll find us on the end there. If you pop onto the stand, we've got some stand collateral. We've got some information you can take away. If you'd like a chat, we'd be more than happy to have a chat. I've got to say as well, Nick, from my perspective, 23 years in franchising, I'm an ex-board member of the British Franchise Association. So even if people just want to talk about franchising in general, I'm very happy to spend a bit of time this afternoon doing that.
Fantastic, thank you. And Jed, your franchise?
We are the Christmas decorators. It speaks for itself. We've also got lots of collateral on the virtual booth if people want to visit and say hi, either by chat or video. Jill O'Brien's on there at the moment. I'll be joining there again quite soon if anyone wants to have a further chat. And I don't think we're as far down the list as V, actually. We should be, because we're the Christmas decorators, but we use the C.
Okay, well, very good.
A bit near at the beginning.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your insights. Thanks for your expertise. And let's go over to stands and let's start those conversations. So thanks for now. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks a lot. Jed, thanks a lot. See you soon. Yeah, cheers.
All the best, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Okay, bye.